Welcome everyone to the first of three ULV Creative Writing poetry readings this April. April is, as it says in the flyer, the coolest month, not the cruelest month. TSLA didn't know what he's talking about. So today is the first of three readings, and it's featuring Hannah Cokash, a current student in the ULV Creative Writing program, and Hannah Schultz, a graduate of the ULV Creative Writing program. They'll be introducing one another momentarily and going in turn for the reading. We'll finish up with a Q&A that will be open to everybody. And I appreciate everybody coming out today on a Good Friday. I'm always tempted to pun on that, but I'm not going to because it's too easy. And I was remembering today when my first book came out, my first reading was on Good Friday in 2015. So this is kind of a lovely, 6 years later, here we are again. It's a perfect day to celebrate literature. And again, welcome everybody, and thank you for taking part in this spring poetry reading series. And now I'm going to turn it over to the authors.
It is my lovely honor to introduce Hannah Schultz because she's going to be reading first. She holds a BA in Educational Studies and minored in Creative Writing, of course, during her time in Verne. But currently, she is in the Poetry MFA program at the Long State University, or at the California State University of Long Beach. She likes spending time with her dogs, which I've seen pictures of, so cute. And she, rewatches Buffy the Vampire Slayer, such a good show. I actually met her for the first time in Sean's fiction writing class, and it was fun, but I don't think I really got to know her until Angela's poetry class. So it's just been, a delight, getting to know you. I love her style and writing. And she's just got great fashion taste. So yeah, without further ado, Hannah, take it away.
Thank you for all the kind words. Okay, so I'll start. Today's my dad's birthday. So it's funny because a lot of my poems are about our complicated relationship. So I'm going to start with one of these poems. It's titled, My Dad Says, you guys can hear me okay, right? I just forgot to ask that. Thumbs up, okay. My dad says I should visit Italy. Something about our ancestors. I don't know how to tell him I'm already here. How I called him from the top of the Duomo, and we talked about the weather in San Bernardino. The rusty sun, the way it burnt him. I sent a postcard without a stamp, hoping he might receive it. His memory is honeyed, and I don't want to embarrass him. He talks about going to the vet for dental care, because what else do you do when you keep losing teeth? A gypsy sits with a cup beneath the Duomo. A local calls her names, tells me not to give her €1. I want to give her everything I have, the golden moon-shaped coins that ring like bells in my bag. I feel something every hour on the hour. The church serves me a reminder, and I talk to myself because no one knows what I'm saying. My father loses things that are bigger than me, a truck, his pit bull, gallons of change. I pray for him to a God that loves copper. At night, I meet a woman and her partner. I spend the night with them because what else do you do when they keep buying drinks and you want something sweeter? My dad says I should visit Italy. I tell him that we'll go together. The next one I'm going to read, thank you, is about my Nana. It's a duplex, and if you aren't familiar with that form, I'm going to send or put a little thing in the chat about the form. It was, I think, invented, or I don't know if that's the right word, by Jared Cho Brown. And you can just click on that and read about it after. I think it's a really useful form. I like repetition in poetry a lot. So I don't know, kind of my, thank you, Angela. It's kind of my take on it, but okay. My Nana. My Nana misses her son, so she mourns him with whiskey, wine, drinks the river, sorry about the blooping sound, drinks the river that runs behind the house dry, the river that he played in, that he picked chicory and four-leaf clovers by, his hair wet and chicoryed in the sun. She blows a cloud of smoke, twists a lemon in her drink. God is twisted, she thinks. Some nights she brings men home, then makes them sleep out on the couch, men who didn't know her son. She only wants to feel again. The ice taps her glass. She wants to feel her son, wants to touch his hand. Another drink, it's late. She knows she has another boy and he'll come home. For now, she mourns. There's something I really like about a short, sweet poem, and I think that duplexes kind of give you the opportunity to do that. So if you are a writer, I really recommend like playing with that form. Okay, it's okay that I just keep going, right? Cool. Okay. All right. This one's called Crossing the Mediterranean. And you can read it in Cultural Weekly in December. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that, but I did. All right, Crossing the Mediterranean. I don't know why I left with a stranger that night, smoking a hash cigarette in the middle of the street, tripping on loose bricks. Everything felt off like the end of an acid trip when your furniture looks like it's been moved 2 inches to the left. Maybe it was the Mediterranean Sea, the sun's refusal to set over it, or the gnarled little dog I found near the highway in Morocco. I couldn't take him home with me, so I sat there cradling him, tears falling like a sunset, my dress turning black, and when the night was swollen thick with hash and lack of sleep, I think I just wanted to let someone hold me for a while. Next I have another duplex because I really like them. It's called Wednesday in Paradise. All right. Ed cleans a movie disc. He wants it to be perfect for the girl that comes in on Wednesdays. She reminds him of Veronica Lake. He waits. He loves his job at the video store, cleaning late-colored discs, watching the girl look for something to rent, her vintage dress. He keeps a penciled list of films to tell her what to rent next. The other customers make him sick. They only want the films he hates, the greatest hits, not her. He'd like to see her in a film. Her hair, a close-up of her neck. He rubs his back. These days it hurts to stand at the front desk, a break. He combs his hair forward, hurt by the way his hairline has regressed. The sun shines through the window cracks. He wishes the girl would come in through the door, her perfume musk, the smell like dust the movies make. They sit untouched, their covers fade in the sun. He wants to make them perfect again. He cleans the discs, waits for the girl. This next one is called Pleasure. They're all really short. I'm sorry that they're not like longer poems. I think I have a longer one in here coming up, hopefully. Okay. Nick says we're inherently selfish, but he buys the homeless man dinner. I wonder if we do these things just to feel pleasure. I do it to forget the time I hit a rabbit with my car and kept driving, saw it split to pieces in the rearview mirror. The time I left a date and went straight to another. I watch people in traffic stop to help others. The boy who sells roses on the freeway exit sells out of flowers. A sign tied to a fence tells me I'm loved, but the homeless man grabs my hand and puts it to his heart, says it's not beating because of the chip in his arm. Here's another one about my dad. Happy birthday, Dad, wherever you are. It's called My Father and I Watch the Sunset in Different Places, and it's a sestina. So I think many of us know what a sestina is because we took poetry together. If you don't know what it is, there's another form I really recommend working with if you're a writer, or if you feel like just giving yourself a really big headache, a really big challenge. All right. Soon my father will be out of prison, but before we pick him up, my mom takes me to the arcade. $10. She wants to make this a day I'll remember. I remember the thick golden coins. I kept them long after we left. I saved the Father's Day gifts I made in school just for that day. Disintegrated paper mache, us in crayon with the sun colored into the corner. All the little things I kept, I knew he had nothing left. Addiction just takes and takes. It took his teeth, our house. I remember thinking we'd get to go back. I asked my mom when, and she told me it was gone. That meant she didn't want to say. Later that day, we sat at the dinner table. My father remembered the things he did, told us about prison, the food, the tattoo he got. It says my name. He took his shirt off to show us, and my mom looked away. I keep that memory like a golden coin, an heirloom plate. I kept the coins just in case, in a box that says my name. He said he didn't need them. I thought he would someday. I take the box down from a shelf, my fingers gray with dust. Yesterday, my dad called crying, apologized for going to prison. He told me that he couldn't remember much about that day, the day he left. I tell him what I remember. The arcade, the tattoo on his chest, the way the skin kept the shape of my name, those golden coins that looked like the sun. I wonder if he needs them yet. I won't ask because I know he won't take help. He wants to be a man that way. Most days I don't hear from him, but I tell him it's okay. I want to take the freeway to his house. I've seen the things he has to take, the homeless man, steel reserve in hand, every member of his trailer park on meth yelling in the street about the daylight that never stays. He wants a taste. His Airstream kept original shag carpet, gray dust on everything. The black hole he punched into the wood paneling. At 6 p.m., he watches the receding sun, the same light that swept the arcade, our old home. It kept him warm in prison, beamed into his cell, a little yellow in the gray. He hates to see that orange color run away. My father and I look at the sun. Okay, next. I have plenty of time left, right? Okay. Next is a poem called Lady Macbeth, but sluttier. I think this is my favorite poem that I've written right now. Okay. You say you don't understand why Saturn ate his children. I don't think it's so bad. I felt that same kind of hunger. It kept me up all night in a hostel in London, staring at the Brazilian with the earring across the way. Now he sends me dick pics from bar bathrooms. I leave him on red. I spend most nights wishing I wasn't alone, like Saturn devouring his children. They're with him all the time. I'd like to keep some of the flesh from every man and woman I've met, squeeze a lime into it because it's never sweet enough, like cheap gin, the brush of skin on skin, stained spot on my sheet, the cotton's too rough. They say you want what you can't have. I just keep wanting. I'm like Lady Macbeth that way, only sluttier. I have a few more left. Okay, this one's titled I'm Trying to Remember. I'm trying to remember my childhood home before the meth raid. Unlovely still. Was it blue or white? A photograph, a house made of wood that I passed. I stood by the back door and peeled off paint. I wanted to see where the home started. Inside the wood paneling, ragged blue chair, a bowl of canned pears. Cookie crisps when the cops came for Dad. It's going to be all right. Flies in the sugar bowl, a broken window, its hinges bowed. Stay there, out on the swing set, the neighbor girl, her blonde hair. She can't play with you anymore. She won't. The sirens scared her, and the trees pine, so familiar they lost their scent. I saw an angel, her silhouette. It must have snowed. Okay, I think I have three or so more. Okay. This next one's called Why Do the Women in Horror Movies Always Die Nude? I asked a girl this before I kissed her, lying naked on a couch that I think was haunted. She was named after a season, one that's warm and inevitably comes. I wonder how we survived it. And why didn't I die the night I stepped out of a bar and grabbed the coat of the first man I saw, fur on the collar? It felt so real. I let him rip my tights down to the ankle, drank something called a fallen angel, and forgot to pay the bill. When I woke up, I didn't remember him. Wine and bread, his breath, cobblestone, a shared cigarette. I remember saying yes. Yes, I saw a painting of St. Agatha presenting her severed breasts, scalloped on a silver plate. They always die like that, sometime in the summer, half naked and slick with sweat. Then there's St. Agatha, cracked open like a pomegranate, alive and flat-chested. In Italy, they eat them. They call them virgin's breasts. And that's actually like a real thing. They have these little desserts that are called virgin's breasts. I think they look kind of gross, but I just thought that was funny. Okay, plenty of time left? Yes. Okay, cool. Sorry, I keep checking. I just want to make sure. It's doing Zoom readings is so weird. I wish you guys could see like the forms and everything. And I wish I could hear you all snapping, but or hoping that you're snapping. All right, this one's called My Space Behind the Couch. And I haven't brought this to workshop yet, so it feels kind of rusty, but I wanted to read it anyways. My earliest memory is of my own small hands pushing our blue couch, tattered, away from the wall to shape myself in between. Mom and Dad yell grainy motherfucks in the kitchen like the sound in an old home video. I sit in the light that comes from the window and suck my thumb. not for comfort, but because my baby doll too had a built-in O in her mouth, where her finger sat. I didn't want to be back in the womb, just in a warm space that I could fit into. Now, my mom says we slept in her car that night. I don't remember that part. Only my space behind the couch, the dust that swept under my breath, my thumb, the thrumming fucks, and yes, maybe a car window. Okay. I forgot to say that one was a 14-line poem. I've been playing with like the idea of a sonnet being only a 14-line poem. And I've been reading Diane Seuss, her like most recent book of sonnets. She's a really great poet that Angela introduced me to. And I found her like recent book to be really inspiring. All right, okay. This one's titled, I Meet My Great Aunt for the First Time, and she is dying. The kind of dying that takes time. Her body under a hand-stitched quilt. She watches the ivy climb. Tumble-down twin bed shows insides, a loose coil peaks. She forgets how to speak English, sputters Italian till it doesn't sound beautiful. She looks at me and sees my grandma, calls me Joanna like she can't see my nose ring glint, my bleach blonde hair. I have my grandmother's eyes. I tell her no, I'm Bobby's girl. I wonder if I should have lied, and she takes my hand again, Joanna. Was I being cruel or kind? She doesn't hear me anymore, her resinous eyes fixed on the finches outside. Okay, and this is my final poem for today, unless I have like a ton more time. I timed this, and I'm not sure if I timed it correctly, so I'll read this and see if someone says something that I should read more. But this feels like it could be it. Okay. It's titled, I'm Holding a Dying Dog. Because no one else will. His eyes white and cracked like the moon, little crescents. And when I set him down, he runs, not knowing where he's going. He hits the wall, then the chair. On his back, his legs keep moving, going nowhere. I wonder if that's what death is like. All you see is a crescent moon, a crack of light that you keep running into. I know that my dad is dying. I can feel it coming like a chill, the way you know what happens when you mix red and blue. A dark crack of paint that only gets larger. I dream of these colors, the lights reflecting purple on my dad's trailer. In my dream, he's dead, meth pipe cracked to a crescent moon. Someone assumes he doesn't have a daughter, then a crack in the earth for him to go into. When I wake, I find the moon outside my own window, and I phone him. I want to make sure he sees it too.
If you guys want to unmute and snap, you're welcome to, everybody. Hannah, that was fantastic. Yeah. That's great. And I think time-wise, that was a perfect place to end.
So I'm going to introduce Hannah Cokash, another Hannah. Hannah Cokash is 20 years old and is majoring in creative writing at University of Laverne. She expects to graduate next year. Reading and writing poetry has always been a comfort for her growing up. She loves her friends and all things astrology and Harry Potter. And I can attest to that because I feel like she wore a Harry Potter shirt probably almost every day in poetry. And it was such a joy.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. And you're totally right. I definitely sported a lot of Harry Potter shirts, but no, thank you. And one last thing, like, yeah, beautiful, like, love your collection of poems, like, great choice. But yeah, okay, I'm setting up my poems right now. Hold on. So my first poem, I decided to read for you guys. For my current poetry class, I had to read this poem collection by Natalie Diaz called Post-Colonial Love Poems. And this is kind of just like my ode to Natalie. Okay, it's called What It Means to Drown. Dear Natalie, dear stream of spring water trickling down the inner ferns and moss on my thoughts. Love, you muse, is like wordless reverence. Marble sculptures awaken, hands grazing hands. How then did you find that person that crept over your skin like bees to a flower bud? Your beloved, tu querido. When you talk about sinking into a kiss like a wave, drinking your lover's words like wine, or studying their hips, rosy hips that curve like boss pears. I listen. To have what you have keeps me up at 3 a.m. Your words tug at my heartstrings. Here I am, one chord away. An ache in your ribcage, heat pooling in your stomach like magma, rose quartz, the Empress card, the smell of lavender, the moon. So that's my first one. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so this next poem I'm about to read is inspired by my Jan term class with Angela. It was like a Euphrasia class, and basically we had to take a painting and interpret it and like kind of like make a story with it. So this one's called Midnight and Her Star. Damp cheeks, crooned eyebrows. She wears misery like a white nightgown. Face buried in her tapestry pillow, trembling back, heartache is the only company she gets these nights. Why him? Little toys untouched, little boots never to be worn again, little hands tugging at the hem of her gown. Only echoes now. Loneliness drapes underneath her eyes, lounging in her bed, arms draped, bodice exposed. She has nothing to hold. And then she glimpses him in the doorway. A demon? A spirit? Someone who wears his sweet freckled face. But it can't be him. This must be a night terror, and she just doesn't know it. Shrouded darkness, ghostly pale skin, frozen state of being. He takes a step to her, and another, peering, silhouette, moonlight bathes his form. She can't bear to look at him, won't. It's not until she feels small, ice-cold hands reach forward and cup her cheeks do the tears trickle down her face like falling leaves. A voiceless goodbye, a butterfly kiss. Midnight embraces her little star before letting him go. Gone. Gone. The remains of an empty bird nest. So we got that going for us. Yeah. Oh, Angel's face. Sorry. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Okay. So, carrying on with like the somber tone we have going. This next poem is just, I wrote this after my dog passed away, and so it's kind of just like an ode to her. And it's called No Pain. A faint hum from the nurse's voice could be heard. No pain. Her cold nose pause. So sorry. And then something I tried to do with structure in this poem was have the past and present interspersed throughout. So on one side of the poem is the past in italics, and on the other form it's just present. So when I say her cold nose tickled my hand, that's past. Sorry, just thought you guys should know. Okay. Her cold nose tickled my hand, stealing morsels from dinner. She was old, and we had her for 14 years. Her stainless steel bowl would remain left untouched by the corner. She used to paw at her pebbles, her teeth brittle like ceramic. She was starving herself. That was the first sign. Black floppy ears that would perk up at the rustling of an open tree bag, balancing rawhide bones on her nose after dinner. None of this was fair on her. Tess wasn't a puppy anymore. Her head would raise at the verbal utterance of the word walk. She tugged at the leash, fluffy white tail, giddily wagging back and forth. She also struggled to stand while going to the bathroom. She'd lose her balance, her sore hind legs trying to keep her from falling. That's what the doctor said anyways. The vet's place reeked of a wet dog smell. Her snout was peppered with gray specks. Her eyes were still full of spirit, just like a flame in the hearth, but fading. Leading up to the euthanization, Tess went and lay down. The tiled floor felt painful on her old bones. She'd plop herself down on her laps when she still thought she was a puppy. It was my sister's decision to euthanize her. Mom held back shaky tears. Dad was distant, but he had walked her every morning. I tried cherishing every moment. Wet black nose, nudging my knee. We spoiled her with expensive treats from dog bakeries and pampered her with the best belly rubs, but still, it was hard letting go. I think even Tess knew it was her time. Sarah and Mom took her, and I drove with Dad. I remember Tess didn't want to get out of the car once they parked. Couldn't. We finally got her into the waiting room. I didn't want to believe that the dreaded day was at our doorstep. Her tail wagged, her eyes alert. A nurse guided us into a separate, white room. It was cramped, and for a split second, I wondered how she felt. Did she feel trapped? Brown, doleful eyes stared up at me. She never liked the vet's place. The nurse told us about the procedure, and I was able to maintain a steady demeanor for a while. We brought her her favorite brown fleece blanket and bedding. When Tess finally laid down, we all huddled around her. She had this solemn, tired expression. The sedative settled in. The familiar pitter-patter pause would greet me when I came back home from school. Her head sunk to the floor and rested against Sarah's leg. Every time I would take a nap or sleep somewhere, I'd find her also resting nearby when I woke up. Her shoulders weakened. Her tail stopped wagging. I felt the warm tears stinging, clouding my vision. She would always sneeze at pollen that had fallen from her nose. It's quiet at home now. Quiet. We stayed with her for as long as the nurse would let us. I could taste the salt on my lips, the ball in my throat growing. Her heartbeat slowed. When she was finally gone, Dad didn't cry, or at least he didn't crumble around us. Mom got choked up. I expect her to come greet me at the front door with tentative licks all over my hands and knees. Sarah buried her face in Tess's neck and began to weep, her back shaking with wordless sobs. My big sister seemed small all of a sudden. My eyes blinked once, twice. I nibbled at my bottom lip and saw how still Tess looked. No pain. My chest heaved as I struggled to breathe. The ball eventually thawed in my throat. My demeanor dissolved along with the onslaught of tears that trickled down my cheeks. My sobs racked through me as all I could do to try and ground myself was pet her. Our fingers combed through her naturally snow-white fur, stroking, hugging her in her last moments. I cried the whole car ride home with Dad. Fur that felt soft in my fingers. Saying goodbye to her was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Her warm, wet tongue licking at my tear-stricken cheeks. She'd always follow one of us upstairs, no matter how frail she got. My dog died in the summer of July 2018, a death in the family. Slobby but sincere kisses. Tess just looked at us. She always knew when one of us was sad. So, the end of that one. So, thank you. Yeah. I just thought she deserved a poem, and it helps. It really does help with like the coping process if you write about it. So, yeah. Okay. Oh my gosh. Oh gosh, you guys. Okay. So this next one is also a Euphrastic poem. I took inspiration from Remedios Varo, this painter, and her painting's called Dead Leaves. Hold on one second. Let me take a sip. Okay. I'm tired of wearing pretty dresses for you. Even the one I have on now makes me want to rip out my hair. Green was never my color, and you were never really mine, were you? Can't you see our house has grown withered, paint decayed, fungus and mold sprouting from the cracks of our marriage? Auburn leaves that lost their shine glide through the open curtain. Faded, dead, they smell my discontentment. Sitting here on this flat chair, all I have a view of is the silhouette of the man you used to be. You keep me confined like a birdcage. Look at my jaded eyes. I don't feel like your wife. Do you notice the way my fingers tug at the blue thread of yarn? I've sewn my way into your heart. Red and white birds fly outward. The locked doors in your chest open. I tug again. You lurch forward. The stitches begin to unravel. I'm tired of being your wife who wears a smile just like a pretty dress. Both taste superficial on my skin. I'd rather be the artist, the mystic, the scientist, the philosopher, the engineer. Without you, I finally see in color. So got that. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, that one's fun. That one's fun because it's always cool, like interpreting different types of paintings and seeing what stories you can do with that. Oh my gosh. Okay, so this next one is a personal experience poem, and it's just fair warning. It's about getting your period for the first time. So just thought you all should know. It's called Monarchy. Audika's face. Okay. Clammy hands that clasp and unclasp apprehensively, cold like ice. Go get mom. She'll know what to do. The red cloak of despair looks back up at me as the bathroom digests my shrinking form further into its walls. I was at my brother's high school graduation party in the comfort of my own home, and yet being in this bathroom that I had been in a million times before suddenly felt alien to my 11-year-old self. Go get mom. Chuckles reverberated from the outside. Were they laughing at me? Someone was joking around. Giggles, snickers, even the red cloak of despair seemed to find it funny. Footsteps creaked along the hardwood floor. I went to go get mom. The chuckles were right behind me now. Crimson, scarlet, why me? Why now? Pads or tampons? Advil or Pamperin? I said my farewell to wearing white. That red cloak of despair was a curse. Cursed cramps, cursed bouts of tears, cursed back pain, cursed headaches, cursed frustration. Those footsteps still stroll through my head, though I wish they could take a walk. Somewhere facing the countryside, an uncut fertile meadow is there, where I can listen to the cat's ear daisies whispering my name like an old friend. During my stroll here, I notice the beginning streams of a river glimmer in the distance like childhood dreams. There's a hidden apple orchard just before you enter the meadow. No red cloak of despair, no serrated chuckles waiting, just the smell of warm, humid rain. Earligolds, pink ladies, and Granny Smiths wait to be plucked. Their tart essence reminds me of fireworks on a summer night. No curse lingers here. The prospect of simply disappearing within this nameless meadow is almost overbearing. Ever since that day, I can't blend in now. The red cloak of despair is mine to carry. The knives that dig into my lower abdomen become lifelong friends I will grow used to. This is what it truly means to get older. The color of blood. So, yeah, got that. Thank you so much, guys. I love seeing the little snaps that keeps me going. Okay. So transitioning into more of a somber poem. This was this poem is basically the night my sister called me. She was like involved in a shooting. So this poem is just kind of like reliving that night. It's called Quicksand. Frigid. I could feel the dry saliva on my tongue like sandpaper. Blue moonlight bathed my goose-bumped, riddled arms. I got a phone call from my sister. The static was deafening. Every word was cut off, and I could barely hear my sister's garbled pleas. Hannah, put mom on right now. Her voice sounded like it was stuck in the back of her throat. Country music concert in Las Vegas. She stuttered, and I didn't hear everything, but I remembered going to my mom's room without hesitation. 58 deaths. The lamp flooded the room with superficial warmth. It's Sarah, I whispered, my voice cracking like a tea set crashing to the floor. Mom's veiny, wrinkled hands clutched the phone like it was her lifeline, anxiety coursing through me like poison. I could hear my sister sobbing about how loud the noises were. It was late, 1 or 2 in the morning. We heard her voice cut out a couple times. Get a cab, honey. Can you do that? Just get out of there. Active shooter cooped up in a hotel, overlooking the concert. She kept on asking Mom to come get her. All I could hear was my sister's panic crying, the way her voice shook. Mom told me to go look at the news. I didn't even realize my fingers were shaking. She was stuck. Sarah was stuck. Quicksand. We were all sinking. I tried to be leveled, but my throat tightened. Mom tried to be strong for her frightened whimpers. She finally came back to us a few days later. She told me she felt ruined. Prescribed medication, antidepressants. All I could do was hug her. The echo of bullets. So, the end to that one. I just thought it was important to write about this because it was a really impactful memory. And I mean, for me, I just try not to shy away from like darker moments in my life. I got to talk about them. So yeah. Okay, guys. Sorry. Am I good on time, Sean? Okay, perfect. This next poem was really fun to write. This is a Norse mythology poem. And I've always just wanted to write, Monica, I've always just been curious about why Odin has one eye. And if you don't know who Odin is, he's just like a really old god in Norse mythology. It's called Do Gods Bleed? The Allfather, the glad of war, the highest, the one-eyed, the hooded one. Odin will never shun his thirst for knowledge. Within the roots of the world tree, Yggdrasil laid Mimir's well. This is where he traveled by boots. There was an itch underneath his skin called hunger. Hunger for a nameless but cosmic truth that slept in the water. What do you sacrifice? Mimir, the water spirit, asked. An eye for an eye. There must be a trade. Everyone has a vice they try to smother like smoke, but it still drives them to obsession. Eyeball, gouged from the socket like a grape plucked from the stem. Squishy, jelly-like, a loose gumball, white. Did crimson trickle down the cheek of his withered, worn face? Do gods bleed? Odin, now one-eyed, stood to his full height. gaze roaring like the peppered sea, breath pitching. What did he see when he stared at his reflection in the water? A deity drunk on the delight of bestowed knowledge, or a gaping black pit, an abyss kissed by blood and strings of tendons? The eyeball plopped. One-eye gods don't care about perfection. Towering but ancient, he turned his back, blue cloak billowing behind him, and treaded back home. To Frigga, to his ravens and wolves, to Valhalla, to rest. Yeah, this is that one. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, I loved this poem. This was so much fun to write. I think I just have respect for him. Like, just having like the power to like just take out your eye. Like, I don't know. Like, I feel it was very powerful action for him. So crazy. Okay, guys, sorry. This is my last poem. Probably one of my favorites that I've ever written. It's called The Siren. Okay. A voice ripples like the tide, pulling from the currents of the ocean. Indistinct promises to be loved flicker underneath the reflection of twilight. Chilled, sweet air that prickles his flesh, delicious urgency. Her cursed tongue calls for him. A forgotten ship sways in the midst. He's already swimming desperately to get to her. Flicking her thorned, sea-foam tail, she perches herself on one of the rocks, tilting her head in a soft manner. Brown locks poised around her shoulders, her cheeks rosy from the northern wind. She is the tide, pulling him in. His feet are cushioned under the slick, grassy moss, one step closer and closer. The sailor heeds her call without an inkling of doubt, deaf to his crew's muted pleas. He listens to the lament of her lost love. Fighting back an ill-intended smirk, saliva begins to collect in her mouth, her nostrils flaring as she breathes in his honeyed aroma. She enchants him. Her beauty blinds his logic. The juniper scales of her tail glimmer in the moonlight like a lighthouse. She was treasured in the murky sea of salt and brine. Cerulean orbs dance over his, tantalizing, magnetizing, but empty. A growing appetite glazed over with hunger. Fangs similar to the serrated barb of a sea urchin start to burrow out from her teeth, more saliva pooling at the corners of her pomegranate-stained lips. Her stomach growls, murmuring an utterance of affection against his neck. She entangles him with soft flattery, compliments twisting like seaweed kelp, waiting to tear a chunk out of his exposed neck with her vice-like jaws. Clawed, webbed fingers ripping him to crimson ribbons, crushing every bone in his ribcage with a throttle of her tail. The verge of a frenzy. Small waves crash against the shore, but it was as if the ocean had gone silent. Seagulls couldn't even be heard. If it wasn't for the cloak of gray cotton clouds that shrouded the moonless sky, he would have seen the way her dilated eyes had taken on a golden gleam. Her song had stopped, and the sailor was never found again. So, yeah, there you go, guys.
That was tremendous. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you,
You're
Hannah.
welcome.
You guys make it easier on me when I can just say thank you, Hannah. And you guys, oh, fantastic. It's so great to hear both of you read. As I said earlier, if everybody remembers, and if you weren't here, I'll say it now. We're going to have an excellent Q&A now, and I like to start the Q&As off with the readers having a chance to ask one another a question. So whichever one of you wants to start it off, go for it. And then after they're done, everybody, you can ask questions in the chat. You can ask out loud. Just do whatever you like. Go for it.
Okay, Hannah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, like I feel we should just give Hannah another round of applause. But yeah, like amazing writing. If I had to have a question for you, I feel like I want to ask about like your writing process. Like what time works best for you to write? Like do you work better at nighttime? Like write better at nighttime? And does music help or is it distracting? And then I think just like do you write? Do you like physically write it or do you type it? So like, yeah, just like what's your writing process like?
Those are fun questions. I like to type, which is so not romantic at all. I can't, but it's so much easier to work with the form that way. And because I need to go to like near rhyme, whatever it is, Rhyme Central or whatever, you know, like you have to look up your words sometimes. Or like synonym for. So it helps. I just like being on the computer. It's not beautiful, but that's how I like to work. I like writing in the morning. I'm a morning person. I don't do well at night. Once I eat dinner, I'm kind of done. I can't like I get sleepy. I'm like a baby. So it helps to for me, I like writing before I eat, or like before dinner, like when I'm kind of hungry. I don't know why it's like that. I didn't realize saying it out loud. It's kind of funny. Wait, what else did you ask? I can't remember.
I think just like, I don't know, like, yeah, like, is there anything, like any rituals or like traditions like you do for the writing process? Like anything that like, I don't know, you want to share? But no, like, so far I agree with you on your writing process. Like with me, I type a lot of my stuff too.
Yeah, I don't like to, sometimes I'll just write like right after workshop, especially if I need to like work on a poem some more. It's best to have, I really recommend like doing that, because you can only write so fast, when someone makes a really good comment, you can only write it all down so fast. So it's really important, I think, to do it while everything's fresh in your mind. So yeah, that's how I do it. Hannah, I wanted to ask you, how do you know, kind of also about the process, how do you know when a poem's finished?
Oh, that is a good question. For me, like, I feel like I always struggle with that. For me, I feel it's so hard to end a poem, and start a poem, because like sometimes the titles are hard. But I feel like I know a poem's finished when I can end it on like a really visceral image. I always try and end a poem on like an image, because I feel like if I can find something that captures the tone I have been carrying throughout the piece, it feels like it's coming to an end. So like for example, my sister's piece about the shooting, I ended with the echo of bullets, because I felt like that was a way to like really just capture the fear she felt that night. So yeah, I would say I know when to finish a poem when there's an image involved, but sometimes I don't. Like sometimes, and this is something everyone should know. Sometimes a writer doesn't always know what they're doing. So sometimes it really takes me like a couple, or it just takes me a while to like really know where I want to end it. But yeah, does that answer your question? Is that yeah? Okay, cool.
Excellent questions, you guys. Yeah, so if anybody else wants to ask questions of the two poets, you're welcome to do so in the chat or out loud. And then Hannah mentioned this earlier, Hannah Schultz, and then Hannah Cokash was referring to the format. I should have done this earlier, but it's been a while since I moderated a poetry reading on Zoom, by which I mean this is the first time I have. I have now enabled you guys to share screen, so if anybody wants to ask questions about form and you want to actually like show that, you're absolutely welcome to do that too. So yeah. Ask away, everybody.
Since they both ask each other about process, one thing I would like to inquire about is whether you write when you're inspired, or do you intentionally have times that you write and you know that you want to write, and so you sit down and write?
I sometimes write when I'm inspired. I don't know. I had so much to do this week. I said before anyone got here, I'm moving tomorrow, out of my childhood home I've lived in my entire life. So there's a lot to pack up and everything. So I like set some time specifically to write this week, and that's normally what I do. But then I have all week to prepare, like this time to prepare. I write everything in my planner. Everything I have to do in my planner. I'm very like organized person. So it doesn't always happen that I feel like inspired at that moment, but I'll do things to make myself feel like I can write something. But I have for my workshop in the MFA program, I have to write a poem a week. So sometimes they don't always come out great, but and sometimes I can get more than a poem a week in. But yeah, sometimes you have to force yourself to feel inspired. What do you think, Hannah?
I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking the same thing. Like, I feel like sometimes inspiration can be really hard when you're like dealing with writer's block. But for me, I feel like a lot of the time I write when I'm inspired by music, specifically music. Like sometimes I'll just put in my headphones when I'm having trouble starting a poem. Because like usually I know what I want to write. I just don't, I'm not in it emotionally. So music really helps with my inspiration. And yeah, like I feel like a lot of the poems I've read, like for my dog poem, I listen to sad music because it helps me get in the mood. So I would say, yeah, like music really helps too. To tackle the question in the comment section, do I figure out, or do we figure out titles before or after the poem is written? Oh my gosh. Hannah, do you want to answer this first, or do you want to? Okay. Okay. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Like I said before, titles are just funky to work with because sometimes sometimes I feel like my titles can be so cheesy. So for me, I write my poem first and then figure out my title because usually when I know what my poem is, what images I want to use, like what tone, I think the title comes easier to me. I feel like it's a little, for me, I feel like I'm not playing it safe, or I don't feel secure when I write my title first because I don't know, like I feel like the title would be kind of controlling me at that point. So yeah, I write the poem first and the title. Sorry, I'm babbling. Go ahead, Anna.
I do the same. I write the poem first and the title, but sometimes I do the thing which kind of feels a little bit like, it almost feels like I'm cheating, but I really like the way it reads and looks, is I'll use the first line as a title. I like long titles a lot, so sometimes I think it just like looks better. And I don't know. It's something I don't know, I see a lot of poets do, but it kind of feels like I'm cheating the system in a way. But then at least the title isn't something that like, comes out like, like an idiomatic sort of thing. I'll answer the question that Angela asked in the chat. The challenges and discoveries of my MFA program. We didn't read a lot of, I've never read a lot of like the classics because I'm not an English major. So in the MFA program, I've been taking like English classes, and I've been reading more of not just contemporary poetry, which I prefer to read, but it's pushing myself. And I talked a little bit about theory. That pushed me a lot because I've never done anything like that. But it's in my cohort, we have a lot of, I think that none of us write like any of the same poetry at all. So it's really interesting to have such unique perspectives when we're workshopping, because everyone writes really different stuff. There's this one guy who kind of he writes a lot of kids books. And so sometimes he'll bring like kids poetry into workshops. That's kind of fun. Another guy, his poems are like 4 pages, 5 pages sometimes. And workshop, I'm like, okay, come on, gotta hurry this up. But it's also really interesting. He's really talented. Yeah, so it's nice to have, I think, such different perspectives.
I have a question for Hannah Schultz. How do you draw the line between private life and poetry? Is there a line for you? And do you think it's more beneficial to your poetry when you're more open about, your life and your family, or when you hold back a little bit?
I think, yeah, that's a really great question. For me, there's no line at all. But I just think I'm a big fan of confessional poetry. I like to read about the stuff that maybe you don't feel that great about. But that's not to say that I want everyone to write confessional poetry. That's an invasion of privacy. I would never say to someone, tell me your deepest, darkest secret. Like, you can't do that. You can't do that. It's not fair. So I just try to, for me, I don't care. I'll tell you guys my deepest, darkest secret. Please don't ask that. Don't ask me that question. But that's kind of what so yeah, there's no line for me, but I totally respect when other poets have that boundary. I'm just weird.
Hannah Cokash, maybe you could speak to that too, because you have poems that are both like, very personal and sensitive, but poems that stretch out beyond. Do you have a preference? Do you approach them differently?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. What I want to say first is like, I totally agree with Hannah. I think conversational or confessional poetry can be so like, I know it sounds a little cheesy, but it's very cathartic. Like, I feel like you get a lot of like those feelings off your chest and like put them on a piece of paper, and it's like, oh, I can rest easy. It's like a little bit of closure with it. So I feel like, yeah, I try and keep a fine balance between what I want to share with the world and what I want to like kind of just want to keep to myself. So yeah, I love when I can get really emotional in my writing, in my poetry. But then I also love playing with fantasy. Like I love mythology, and I love that kind of stuff. But I think when you can get really confessional and like intimate with your writing, you're just connecting with like, the readers, whether like it's your friend reading, your family, or like a stranger. I think like when writing can really bond someone, especially if they can relate to what you're going through. Like I think it really, really helps. So yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming today. That was fantastic. I mean, that was a wonderful reading. Thanks everybody for coming. Thank you, Hannah. A friendly reminder that in 2 weeks, come on back if you can and join us for Monica Rosas and Emma Garcia. They'll be reading in the second of our 3 readings this month. But Hannah and Hannah, it's great to see you both, and I'm glad you're doing really well. And your poetry is wonderful. And yes, thanks for sharing it with us on this very Good Friday. And take care. If you guys want to stick around for a minute, that'd be great. And otherwise, thank you all, and hope to see you in a couple weeks.